¡Ay! Llegó tu bachatero, mami. Un corazón cargado de injusticia, una lágrima que parte nuestras almas. ¡Ay, mi corazón! ¡Ay, ay, mi corazón!
Cuando el reloj marca las 2,
I arrived in the Dominican Republic, September of '97. I had no idea of the magnitude of all that I was going to confront.
Padre de verdad, él tiene que comprender que a la comunidad no lo quiere.
El cura o lo sacan del país o lo vamos a sacar nosotros. Ese es un cura enemigo de la República.
The town of Los Llanos in the Dominican Republic is the center of Father Christopher Hartley's parish. Every day, he goes out to the sugar plantations, to the tiny villages known as bateys, where Dominicans rarely go.
One of the first things I was told, some of the people in the Dominican Republic came to me and said, by the way, remember that you're not allowed into the Vicini Batallas. It took me 3 months to muster the courage to go into the sugarcane fields.
¿Cómo están?
The growing and harvesting of Dominican sugarcane is done almost entirely by laborers from Haiti. What Father Christopher saw in the plantations, he began to document.
Dígame una cosa, ¿y usted anda descalzo?
Descalzo, ese no vale para uno con familia, va a comprar una bota.
Yeah. ¿Usted es rico o es pobre?
Nosotros somos pobres.
Somos pobres.
Pobres felices, Dios está ayudando a nosotros.
Dios nos ayuda.
Sí, Dios está ayudando a
I'm very
nosotros.
poor, but God is
Nosotros
always
somos
on our side.
pobres. Hay días nosotros duermes sin comer.
¿Qué pasó?
Muy bien. Gradually, I began to learn more about their situation. What I discovered was truly appalling.
Eso me ha salido así, sin más para allá y sin más para acá.
Los otros días, no sé por qué yo me metí a limpiarlo y le saqué hasta maco de adentro.
¿Cómo va a ser?
Sí.
Maquitos se le sacaron.
¿Pero ustedes se van a enfermar bebiendo ese agua?
Pero aquí los niños aquí están llenos de parásitos.
Parásitos.
Todo desnutrido de los parásitos del agua.
¿Para cuántos es que tú cocinas ahí? ¿Cuánta gente?
Uy, Mucha gente.
¿Cuántos
8
viven aquí?
gente.
8, ¿para 8?
Sí.
Muy bien. ¿Y aquí cuántos viven?
7, padre.
¿Aquí 7?
Sí.
A ver, cuando se levantaron por la mañana, ¿qué comieron? Hay que hablar la verdad al padre. Todavía no han comido nada.
Breaking a centuries-old taboo, the father brings in outsiders, American doctors, to see what they can do to help.
¿Te caíste de dónde? ¿Qué es lo que tú te has puesto ahí? ¿Eso qué es? What he's curing his wound with toothpaste.
Really, these are some of the worst conditions that I've ever seen. This is really extreme poverty. You know, families are living without access to water, without access to food, without access to, you know, really any health care or any infrastructure at all.
The Haitian workers are under armed guard. They are not allowed to leave the plantations.
People come here in the hope of a better life. The truth of the matter is that they make less than 90 cents a day.
And instead of cash, they receive vouchers, which they can redeem for high-priced food at a company store.
¿Pero a ti no te gustaría volver a tu país y ver si tu familia está viva?
No, no va, no, porque no tiene con quién va.
¿No tienes con qué ir?
No.
¿No tienes nada?
No.
He was told that he was going to make a very good wage when he was brought as a very young man in 1976. And he realizes that the end of his life is going to come here at the Batey, and he has absolutely nothing. That's the expression that he used in Spanish. Yo no tengo nada. I have nothing. All he has is the roof that the company has put over his head, lets him stay for as long as he is useful.
The Dominican Republic is a vacationer's paradise. Europeans and Americans flock here in the winter months. But just inland from the coast are the sugar plantations. 250,000 acres of them. The country's most important agricultural industry. The Dominican Republic shares a Caribbean island with Haiti. It was here that African slaves were first used in the Americas to cut sugarcane. The two nations make uneasy neighbors. Haiti is one of the most dysfunctional countries in the world, rife with poverty and violence. To Haitians, the Dominican Republic, though itself a poor country, offers the promise of survival. There are 5 large sugar companies in the Dominican Republic. The Vicini family, which owns most of the plantations in Father Christopher's parish, is one of the wealthiest.
And here is the boss here. He got the people working for him here. Many people working for him here. Many. He's very rich. He got houses. Oh my God, every kind of house. 20 million, 10 million the house, 40 million. Beautiful house.
The Vicini family's business interests extend beyond sugar to include banking, property, and the media. Gustavo Peña is the editor of Clave Digital, an online newspaper that has managed to maintain its independence.
Los Vicini se han llevado bien con los dictadores, con los presidentes democráticos. Y siempre se dice que ellos son parte del poder tras bastidores aquí en República Dominicana. Siempre se ha dicho que lo que pida un Vicini, un presidente no se lo puede negar.
In fact, the second Vicini to run the family sugar business, Juan Bautista, was president of the Dominican Republic in the early 1920s. The network of Vicini corporations is currently run by Juan Bautista and Felipe Vicini. Despite their prominence, they keep out of the public eye. There are few published photographs of the family, and they are rarely mentioned in the press. The Vicini refused to be interviewed for this film.
¿Y de quién es esta casa, ¿Perdón?
De los vecinos.
El padre Christopher y la persona que apoyan al padre Christopher han sido muy valientes.
Ana Matila Lora works for the TV station Tele Antillas.
Es un poder que está en todas partes. Es como una mano invisible que tiene mucho poder de control.
Father Christopher is on his way to the Haitian border with Father Pedro Rucroix, a Belgian priest who has been helping the sugarcane workers here for 30 years. They want to see for themselves how the sugar companies bring Haitians into the country.
Haitians are recruited by what are called buscones, who work for the companies, go across the border into Haiti and recruit approximately 30,000 men every harvest season.
Their journey takes them far from the tourist resorts and the sugar plantations up into the mountains near the border with Haiti. Father Christopher knows where the buscones bring the Haitians across because of a tip-off from a Vicini employee.
How we got wind of this story is actually very ironic. This Haitian who worked as one of the buscones came to me complaining that the person for whom he had rounded up 200 men had not paid him. So in other words, he was a slave merchant who had not received his reward and was coming to the priest asking for justice. So we brought Darío into my house, and with a video camera, we asked him to tell us the whole story.
Luego, ¿dónde lo llevó? Me llevó en la frontera de Pueblo Contigo. ¿Y quién está en la frontera a la Guardia Dominicana? Su empleado, la compañía, la oficina que lo paga.
The government's complicity in human trafficking is obvious as soon as the priests reach the army post near the frontier.
Por aquí no es por donde pasan los que van a trabajar a los batés que vienen indocumentados y todo eso.
Sí, pasan por allá arriba.
Pasan por allá arriba.
Sí.
¿Y en estos días han estado pasando mucho?
Sí, ellos pasan, porque esa gente se van a pie, ellos pasan.
¿Y ustedes allá arriba no pueden hacer nada? ¿No se pueden ir de aquí o...?
No, ya uno sabe, uno no broma con esa gente. Nosotros con esa gente no bromamos. ¿Y quién aguanta todo eso negro aquí en el frontera?
By nightfall, Father Christopher and Father Pedro reach the border camp. Here, Haitians are made to wait until they can be shipped to the plantations.
¿Cuántos días van a estar esperando? Porque nadie sabe.
Nadie sabe.
The man who directs the shipment of Haitians to the Vicini cane fields is named Narrated.
Señor Narrated, soy el jefe segundo mayor de Comté. Que tanto Narrated no estoy aquí, no hay día.
O sea que si el perro está presente, usted no puede traer.
No puede traer ni una persona.
These people have been lured across the border with tales of good jobs. They are so desperate, they've even paid Narrated's men to bring them here.
¿Cómo es tu nombre?
Espinal.
¿Dónde vives tú, Espinal?
Allá en Chicafé.
¿Y a dónde vas?
Ya, yo voy a buscar trabajo, la vida.
¿Dónde?
De Santo Domingo.
¿De Santo Domingo?
Primer año yo voy.
¿Tú nunca has picado caña antes?
No.
¿Tú no sabes picar caña?
Bueno, yo voy a ver porque yo soy hombre, como quiera yo voy a trabajar.
A trabajar.
But Espinal has been brought across the border for only one purpose, to cut cane. Haitians who have documents or identity cards are stripped of them. They are now stateless, illegal, and subject to arrest everywhere in the Dominican Republic, except on the plantations.
They are bussed into the batallas 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, so they do not know where they are, and therefore cannot escape, cannot run away.
Now, hey, concentration camp?
Are we going to be able to treat here,
See, I don't see why not. We're going to get into a lot of trouble. But if you don't mind it.
Let's do it.
No. Shoot as fast as you can because you don't know how many seconds you're going to have before you're kicked out. The sooner we can get out of here, guys, the better, huh? Ready? Hold on. Well, guys, I hope it was useful.
This is where they're going to put the workers when they arrive. Anywhere from 60 to 100 people will be crammed into this one barrack. You can see all the wiring up on the top, which is to prevent them from escaping at night. And they will have armed men at the door of the barracks at night, so they don't attempt to flee the barrack in the night. Batallas are like a state within a state, because the company there is the police, is the government. They exercise absolute authority over the lives of those who dwell there, which is quasi-slavery.
Se sabe sí que ellos han conseguido becas, que pagan más o menos bien a sus empleados ejecutivos y los que están aquí en la capital, pero nunca se ha entendido el por qué esta familia, en los batalles de ellos, son donde peor se trata al empleado del campo, al bracero, viviendo en condiciones realmente que recuerdan las barracas de la Edad Media, ¿no? de esclavista, una cosa increíble, ¿no?
As many as 1 million Haitians live in the Dominican Republic. No one knows for certain how many live in the batallas.
Mi nombre es Johnny Belizaires. Mis padres son inmigrantes haitianos. Entonces nací en un batey.
Yo trabajo de niño. Desde la edad de 7 años mi papá me llevaba para el corte con él y él picaba la caña y yo le juntaba la caña y durábamos el día entero en el corte.
no importando el sexo, eso trabajan. Tanto las hembras como los varones trabajan.
Mi nombre es Yela Machaza, yo nací en Haití. Yo viví ahora en un batey que se llama Canepa. Yo vení para acá porque en el 94 se fue el presidente que había allá. Había matación de gente. El marido mío es el picador de la caña. Lo que gana no da para educar a sus hijos. No da para comprar ni uniforme ni nada. Porque no da ni para comer.
The Batey dwellers get much of their calories from chewing sugarcane. Their diet often leads to malnutrition.
Yo tengo 25 años y yo nací en este batey y nunca le he visto la cara al dueño personalmente, a ese vecino, y venir acá y sentarse, por lo menos pasar y preguntarle a la gente cómo se siente, cómo es que anda la cosa. Nunca lo he visto, solamente pasa en su helicóptero.
Most of this product ends up in the United States. The United States purchases the raw material, it's processed in the refineries in the United States, and it ends up on the American table. I'm sure most American families would be very embarrassed to know at what price they put sugar in their coffee every morning. The Vicini family have a lot of blood on their hands. This is well known. Nobody dares speak out and say it because many people fear for their lives or the lives of their loved ones. And this is a fact. People disappear. People are never found.
In an unmarked corner of the Vicini plantation is a cemetery.
Dominicans don't know of this cemetery. I only found this place about 7-8 months ago, and I've been here for 7 years. And nobody had ever mentioned it. It's like a taboo place. You're standing on people's bodies, all of this. It's not just where you see crosses. Some are very obvious. You can just see those lumps. Why all of a sudden there's no grass over there? I mean, this is tropical weather. Everything grows in 5 minutes. This is the man who was murdered the night of December 7th. He was beaten as he was climbing into the bus to come across the border, and he was found dead on arrival at the Vicini Batey called Copellito.
Dario told the priest that Merite, the Vicini's chief plantation guard, was a cruel and brutal man.
Ella misma me dice, si parlavo afuera como un guardia, ella como un palo en mi mano. Si una anda rápido, ella da un yaguazo.
There was a struggle because there were many hundreds of people trying to get into these buses, and clearly not enough buses. This individual couldn't make it through the door of the bus, and Merite hit him with a stick across the chest. But he was so eager to get into the bus that he crawled in, and Merite just let him go. When they arrived here in Copellito, this man is still lying down. They go and shake him, and he's dead.
The next day, a body was dumped in the unmarked cemetery. But believing you know what happened and proving it are different matters.
The weakness of the case is the link between the physical violence and the fact that this was the same person. Dario heard of that, but he wasn't present when they found the man dead. And he wasn't present at the burial. So we would need an autopsy. We would need a permit from the judge. Especially being a Haitian, a judge is going to be very reluctant to take the case of a crime that could directly or indirectly be attributed to the Vicini company. The Vicini family have indirectly many times tried to pressure me to not go into the Bateys. In fact, that's one of the great fears of the Spanish embassy, the American embassy, is that what would happen if they stop you, they deliberately and explicitly forbid you from entering the Bateys. And I've always said, I would certainly go anyway. I don't care what they did to me. And they know very well how determined I am to change this system.
Sí, buenas. ¿Podría hablar con Carolina Núñez, por favor?
January 20th, the year 2000. I was here in my residence when this lady comes to say, Father, President Leonel Fernandez is coming tomorrow to Batey Gautier for some political activity, and it is the custom in the Dominican Republic. They always invite the priest to give an invocation or to say a prayer to invoke God's blessing on the president, on the people, and so on. And what was supposed to be a simple blessing became a 5-page speech. I was very brave the night I wrote it. And I was shivering with fear when I suddenly had to read out the words that I had very courageously written. I was describing the horrible living conditions and telling the president that he had come to the threshold of hell.
The publicity forced the Vicini into discussions with the church. For 3 years, the family held meetings with a committee that included the priest, the bishop, and the church's lawyer, Noemi Mendez.
Pues cuando llegó el momento de la acción, cuando dijimos hay que hacer un presupuesto, tenemos que tener conocimiento de qué es lo que se va a hacer, de dónde se va a hacer. Entonces, de repente, la próxima reunión no se hizo. Y la próxima no se hizo y nos dejaron esperando.
And then came the death threats. Father Christopher's upbringing is in stark contrast to the situation he is now confronting. His mother, Pilar, is from the Spanish aristocracy. The daughter of a count, her family includes a marquis, an ambassador, and even a prime minister. His father's family founded the famous British company Hartley's Jam.
We'd been married for 5 years, living in London, and our 3 children were born in London. And we came to live here in 1964, and we've been very happy. Christopher is the oldest, Virginia, and William, Billy.
At school, if we were in any sort of trouble, we could say, we'll call Christopher, and he will, fix this fight very quickly, So we did, I definitely felt protected by him, and he was very much there for us in school. So he did have already kind of a strong personality that he was kind of respected,
And not only a strong personality, but also strong.
He was strong physically. So
he was a sportsman.
He was very competitive in his sports, so he always wanted to win. He really was very competitive.
He had so much energy, we couldn't stop him. And then sometimes, we asked him to do something, and he was a little bit, rebelde.
He was a rebel. He was always getting into trouble. He was very difficult.
But when he was 15 years old, Christopher had an experience that would change his life.
I have never told anyone the story of my vocation because I do not know how to put into words what happened to me. All I know is I sat on the edge of my bed and I realized I was a very unhappy person, with no reason whatsoever to be unhappy. At that point, I realized that God loved me and that I wanted to give my whole life to Him.
As soon as I came into the room, he said to me, "Mommy, I want to go to a seminary." And I started laughing, because I thought really it's the last thing I can hear from him, to a seminary. Yes, you, I said, come on, don't joke, come on. And he looked at me in such a way, I can't forget it, With his eyes like that, I said, "Mommy, I'm going to go to seminary because Christ asked me to follow him, and I'm going to follow him." That in that moment, in the way he looked at me, I understood that was serious.
Well, if your son says that he's going to be an engine driver or a mass poisoner or something, you can remonstrate, you can talk to him, and you can... If he says he wants to be a priest, it's very difficult. You can't say a priest is intrinsically a bad thing to be, and you're not going to earn any money. I mean, so I find myself, as far as that goes, at a dead end. There's nothing you can't really answer that one.
type of society that I grew up in, you know, very exclusive, very privileged. It may seem many times like, you know, throwing away a phenomenal future. But this year it's going to be 30 years that I entered the seminary, and I have never had a doubt. Christmas of 1976, and I was already spent a year and a half in the seminary. One of the gifts was a book from my father, and it was about Mother Teresa, with the most striking images about the horrible misery of the streets of Calcutta. When I saw those photographs, I never said anything to anybody, but deep down in my heart, I recall distinctly saying, I want to spend the rest of my life doing exactly this. I met Mother Teresa for the first time in August of 1977. I was 18. I volunteered to work in one of her shelters in the outskirts of London. I remember her very distinctly saying, love the poor and be holy. Love the poor and be holy. And that was like carved in my brain, like chiseled with fire.
Christopher spent much of the next 20 years working for Mother Teresa.
Once working in the Home for the Dying in Calcutta, I remember there was this man brought from a gutter who was obviously going to live not another day. Mother Teresa told me, Christopher, take care of him. At lunchtime, we were told we all had to go home. I wanted to stay, but I was forced to go home. We all had to have lunch. I was sure that when I came back in the afternoon to work there, he would be dead. When I came back, he was barely alive, and from his little cot, he looked at me, he stretched his arms out, and I held his hands in my hands, and his last words just before he died were, I've been waiting for you. And in a sense, that is what every poor person says to me, with words, without words, with different words. I have been waiting for you.
¡De aquí se van! ¡O hay guerra!
Los moradores de un barrio de Mao quemaron las casas donde vivían los extranjeros.
Fear and hatred of Haitians has long been a part of Dominican society. Almost every day, the media reports on acts of violence around the country. For many Haitians, the bâtés, however deprived, are the only place they can feel safe.
The first thing we did was begin feeding centers in the spring of 2001. We had nothing, we didn't have a kitchen. Kids brought a plate and a spoon from their homes, and we just started feeding people. This piece of property was given by the government to the church. Unfortunately, when the sugarcane companies realized They brought in the military to basically throw me out. I was very forceful. I insisted that they were the ones who were supposed to leave and I would not move. I was very fortunate that the dwellers of the batey, encouraged by my stand, especially women, all gathered around me and started screaming at the military, supporting me. Finally, the military gave in and they never came back again. But just to be on the safe side, our first major investment at a tremendous expense was to build this very high wall around the property, because unfortunately in places where the rule of law does not exist, walls speak much more eloquently than signatures.
Father Christopher raised money from the Spanish government to build a compound in the middle of Batey Paloma and began to serve meals on a grand scale.
We are at present feeding over 450 children every day, Monday through Friday. It's the only decent meal that they're going to have in the whole day. The Vicini had the intention of beginning the harvest this season without telling them the price per ton of sugarcane that they were going to be paid. Oh, they'll find out on first payment day. But did anybody ever take up a job without knowing how much they were going to be paid?
Bueno, pues yo les digo una cosa, señores. Ustedes no pueden ir a picar caña si ustedes no saben cuánto le van a pagar.
I went to every batey and I said, nobody works. It was the first strike. It started with a strike.
The head of the Vicini plantation guards, Narrated, tries to intervene.
Tú no me respetas. A quien tú tienes que respetar es a esta gente. Esta gente es tu negocio.
They try to avoid as much as they can a direct confrontation with me. Because psychologically, on the employees, it looks very negative if they have a confrontation and they lose every confrontation. Because I don't budge.
Yo no soy el que tiene miedo, tú tienes miedo.
It also would be very negative if I lost one of these confrontations. That's why I always try to be very sure that what I'm doing is right. It might be dangerous, it might be risky, but it has to be right, because that's my only protection.
Oye, yo lo que te quería decir, Johnny, sabes que no sé si te han dicho que este domingo tenemos un encuentro de todos los trabajadores. Tú me tienes que mover a todo este paquetón de gente, que me vayan todos los trabajadores.
We began to explain to them some of the teachings of the church, which sometimes are even very unknown to Catholics. But the church, in the Second Vatican Council, of all documents, says that workers have a right to strike.
Ustedes tienen que estar siempre unidos, siempre unidos. Porque uno solo es un infeliz, es un pobrecito. Pero si ustedes están unidos, nadie les puede vencer. A una persona la pueden votar de aquí, pero no van a votar a 300. Porque si ustedes no pican caña, ¿qué pasa con el vagonero? ¿Qué pasa con el huellero si el picador no pica? ¿Qué pasa con el cadenero si el picador no pica? ¿Qué pasa con el tractorista? ¿Qué pasa con el maquinista? ¿Y qué pasa con el ingenio? El ingenio no muele. Entonces, ¿quién es la gente más importante de la compañía? El picador. Miren, el picador es la persona más importante de esta compañía, porque si el picador no pica, no se mueve el ingenio. ¿De acuerdo? La fuerza está en la unidad, en la unión. ¿De acuerdo? Entonces, siempre unidos. ¿D'accord? Sí. D'accord. Hoy no vamos para el corte ninguno. Hoy no se va para el corte. ¿Ya?
Ya.
¿Nadie se quedó?
No, nadie, todo.
After strikes in 23 bateys, the Vicini concede to the workers' demands and tell them how much they will be paid, even giving them a small pay raise. But there would be consequences.
This year has been a terrible drought, and they've had plenty of fires, which they're trying to blame on me.
Hay muchas cosas que ellos regalan papel, que dice los papel que son mentiras. Y dice que el padre lo manda a los haitianos a quemar el campo caña. Nosotros que sabemos que son mentiras. Hay muchas palabras que dice, a mí me duele mucho porque yo veo que es un calumnia. La compañía es malo.
I have been threatened several times. The last one was only about a week ago. The message that was sent to me was tell the Reverend that one day someone's going to find him lying in the sugarcane fields with his mouth full of flies. And the other was a threat, especially nasty because what it implied is we're not going to hurt you, we're going to hurt the people who work with you.
Ya no tengo miedo porque yo creo que no hay peor muerte que esta. No, es decir, que vivir en un sitio donde uno carece de equidad y justicia para mí es una tumba, es un infierno. Esto es la razón que no le tengo miedo a nada y porque creo que no hay otra muerte peor que esta.
I mentioned these threats on a Sunday Mass at my sermon, where I said, may everyone be aware that this has happened. I want to make it very clear that nothing, absolutely nothing in this world is going to stop me.
Father Christopher's latest effort at helping the Haitians gives his enemies an opportunity to attack him.
Mi nombre es Vicente Jules García. Nací en el 1932, un 25 de septiembre.
For 15 years, Vicente lived in Bate La Redonda, in a dark and tiny shack.
Aquí yo vivía antes que el Padre Christopher nos dio esta casa, me dio la casa de allá.
After years of struggle, Father Christopher has been able to persuade the Dominican government to provide a few new houses in Bate Gautier.
The first houses that we built were built with government money. It is the first time in the history of this country that the government has invested a dime in building a home for a Haitian.
In the end, fewer than half the homes were given to Haitians. But now Vicente lives in a 3-room house, complete with indoor plumbing. Although most of the houses at Gautier were given to Dominicans, word spreads that the priest is being unfair to the locals.
Ahí en Gautier dieron una casa hacia ahí y él se la repartió a los haitianos y a los dominicanos fuera de la casa. Y por eso es que no queremos el padre. ¡Y no queremos el padre!
Los vecinos no pueden defender las cosas malas que hacen, las injusticias, la explotación. Entonces, han acudido al expediente del nacionalismo. Han tomado a mucha gente buena, quizá incauta, que no sabe. Puede ser que no le guste o le moleste una presencia de haitianos quizá en puestos de trabajo. Y los vecinos quieren exacerbar estos odios.
Los organizadores de la protesta dijeron que continuarán en pie de lucha hasta que el sacerdote Christopher Hartley abandone San José de los Llanos.
Mejor muerto y fuera el padre de aquí, fuera el padre.
I'm very frequently scared, but it's something I've learned to live with. So I very seldom think about it. I don't think the times that I've experienced fear has ever changed my life in any shape or form.
Lo primero que quiero decir, mal que le pese a quien le pese, el padre no va para ninguna parte más que para los batalles.
Hace algunas semanas hicimos la denuncia del padre.
The turmoil in Father Christopher's parish attracts the attention of the media in the United States and Europe. Even Dominican reporters cover the story.
Y sufrió graves quemaduras que la mantienen postrada en una cama.
El ingenio Cristóbal Colón, propiedad de la familia Vicini, han quedado seriamente dañados.
Padre Christopher nos escucha y que a través de él, otros como ustedes y los demás países saben la realidad en que estamos viviendo. Y él ha sido como un Dios para nosotros, como un Mesías esperado, que nosotros a lo largo del camino, a través de nuestra súplica, Dios ha sabido escucharnos. Porque gracias a él, ustedes hoy han visto con sus propios ojos, no es que le han dicho, sino han visto la realidad.
But the international attention hasn't protected Father Pedro Ruqua. Like Father Christopher, he is under attack for defending Haitian cane workers. After he is physically assaulted, Amnesty International starts a campaign in his defense.
Franklin Almeida invitó al padre Pedro Ruqua a aclarar quién o quiénes pretenden hacerle daño.
Despite letters from human rights groups around the world, the Secretary of the Interior and Police refuses to take the complaint seriously.
Todas dicen más o menos lo mismo y se refieren a supuestas amenazas contra el padre Ruqua.
When Father Pedro finally meets with the secretary, he is ridiculed in front of the press. The message is clear. Priests who advocate for the Haitians will have no guarantee of protection from the government.
As events have unfolded in the past months, the sugarcane industry has been trying to pressure me and the people who work with me to basically back off and to leave things the way they are.
Yo creo que hay un riesgo real de que a él, al padre Christopher y a sus colaboradores más cercanos, le pueda pasar algo en cualquier momento. Y que puede venir del sector más insólito. Igual puede venir de un fanático que esté en su casa, como decía hace un momentito, que puede venir encomendado por cualquiera de los sectores que le están adversando en este momento.
I am worried about him because I know that he's not going to stop. He is very much an all or nothing person. And if he has to hedge his ideals, I think it would be very sad. I'd rather see him go out true to his beliefs than hang around not being true to his beliefs.
Saque los haitianos de aquí, lléveselo para Haití. Que nosotros le vamos a decir a los dominicanos que le tenemos que buscar empleo.
The Dominican media rarely supports the Haitians. Consuelo Despradel has 2 shows a day, and she is not shy about speaking her mind.
Porque él dice que él es descendiente. ¿Tú sabes lo que es la boca corre? Que él es descendiente de los reyes de España. Y que a él nadie lo toca. Óyeme esta vaina. Eso es interesantísimo, eso.
I've been accused of every possible sin, crime, immorality that you could possibly conceive through a smearing campaign.
Lléveselo todito para Haití.
But the church is fully aware that this is a staged campaign, and the bishop is not going to give in.
The Vicini pressure the bishop to remove Father Christopher. But Bishop Azoria has stated publicly that he supports his priest.
¿Por qué si el Padre Christopher, dentro de su abanico de bondad que siente por los hermanos haitianos y que no se refleja de esa misma manera en los dominicanos, por qué no se ha dirigido hacia Haití a servir a los haitianos allá en Haití que más necesitan el servicio que los que están acá?
El trabajo del Padre Christopher y otros llanos es un trabajo de la Iglesia. No ver el trabajo del Padre Christopher como algo individual. La razón fundamental de esto es los intereses económicos y políticos de algún sector del país.
Es la industria azucarera la única responsable del problema que está ocurriendo. Y en concreto, en mi parroquia se llama la familia Vicini, que está empeñada en sacarme de este país.
Father Christopher's comments rarely make the Dominican news.
Son muy pocos los periodistas que lo hacen de manera crítica porque los Vicini en los medios que no tienen inversión apoyan con publicidad. Entonces la gente a los medios y los periodistas a veces tienen miedo de perder la publicidad.
Los curas católicos acusados de difamar al país ante la comunidad internacional con el tema de la supuesta violación de los derechos humanos de los haitianos continúan atravesando una tormenta de críticas de parte de sectores diversos del país.
Esta gente, los Vicini, han dado dinero y han, tú sabes, han comprado a mucha gente y atemorizan y en broma, tú sabes, meten...
I have about 700 square miles of a parish with 60 villages and bateys. I travel just about every afternoon to a different village to celebrate Holy Mass.
Today he has brought the American doctors to El Manguito to help his Dominican parishioners.
This is not a batey, eh?
Oh,
These are
it's not.
Dominicans.
It seems like people
No,
were
no,
a
no,
little better
no.
off
They
here.
no, and they own the land. This is their
So they
piece of
can invest in
property, generation after generation. They're not rich, maybe they're just as poor. You can see the houses
But they
look a
take
little...
care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you own the place.
How do these folks feel about the Haitians?
Historically, there's a tremendous hostility toward the Haitian. Remember that this country never became independent from Spain. It became independent from Haiti. When the Spaniards left the island, they abandoned the island. Haitians moved in for 22 years. So their freedom, their independence is from Haiti. So they view them as the aggressor, etc. And then, of course, there's the question of race. They see them that they're just a little more black than they are. So they're just about the only people they can look down upon, because they're poorer and blacker.
No, se podrán quejar.
Ay, padre.
I've been in many places in the Dominican Republic and in many other developing countries. I've been taken to places where people have said, oh, look at this, isn't this terrible, isn't this tragic, isn't this poor? And, you know, they really all pale in comparison to the Bateyes.
Father Christopher arranges for the American doctors to hold a clinic for the children of 3 Bateyes.
Rates of AIDS here are among the highest in the world. This is a real hotspot now, and the rates are increasing. Over half of the adults have tuberculosis, and we know that over a quarter of the children here have had tuberculosis. Many women die prior to giving birth or in childbirth, and we know that infant mortality in children who die in the first month after birth or at birth is just incredibly high. And what's really tragic about those numbers is that we know how to treat all those conditions. We know how to prevent them and we know how to treat them. And the treatments are simple and they're cheap. And what's truly tragic is how very few of those simple, basic, life-saving interventions are getting out here to the people who need them the most.
This skin disease is bacteria. But this is also malnutrition.
Cuando uno se accidenta aquí, nadie le hace caso, ni siquiera los jefes visitan a uno, no le dan nada de qué comer. Uno tiene que bandeársela como... Si no hay un buen vecino cerca, que de lo poco que tiene, por ejemplo, le daría a mi esposa, lamentablemente nos moriríamos de hambre. Es decir, que uno, lamentablemente, aunque me duela decirlo, uno va a ver como que los hijos se mueren de hambre y sin uno poder hacer nada.
¿Cómo están? ¿Y ninguno de ustedes está enfermo? ¿Sí? Pues vaya a ver a la doctora. Pero hay una doctora para la gente vieja como tú y fea. ¿Cómo está, doñita?
Bien, ¿y tú?
Muy bien. Doña, ¿usted tiene niños que están enfermos que los quiere llevar al médico?
Sí.
Pues mire, tráigame estos niños que los vamos a llevar a la mula. Que hay unos doctores ahí.
Sí.
Súbalos en la camioneta mía que yo los llevo.
¿Está bien? ¿Ya me bañarla?
Sí, báñalos rápido.
Ya bañate tú. Búscame el cepillo,
Besides the help the church provides, there is almost no outside aid to the Haitian cane workers in this parish. Just 3 Peace Corps volunteers work in the vast Vicini plantations.
I have never had a sit-down conversation with Juan Bautista Vicini. Most of my work is with people at lower levels. The administrative head of this region of Bateyes. I work very closely with him, possibly closer than Father Chris does, because he's working with them at a very high level. Change this, pay them more, uphold your healthcare commitments, And my work here is about really my neighbors. How can we make their lives better tomorrow? So that's an easier question to go to them with. Okay, we want to do a garden. Can we get some seeds? That's an easier thing than change your entire system of existence. Father Christopher comes off as kind of proud, and that kind of, in my opinion, a little bit can be kind of brash. Like, well, who do you think you are? You know, aren't the issues more complicated than that? Don't the Vicinis have a right to at least have a sugarcane industry? Maybe they owe their workers more than they're giving them, but don't they have the right to be doing this, or don't they have some rights too? And he's just so committed to the rights of the people that sometimes it's easy to imagine he's not really that balanced.
Yo creí que tú sabías hablar, este pequeño sinvergüenza.
¿Cómo tú te llamas?
But I think at his core, he is humble beyond anyone I've ever known.
¿Te llamas Juanito?
Because none of this is for him.
¿Cómo?
He's in it to change the system that causes people to live in poverty while a billion-dollar company profits off of it.
¿Este es el que me van a regalar? Me voy a llevar a Luis Ángel.
Los niños no tienen, la verdad es que no tienen, si sus padres no tienen documento tampoco ellos pueden tener. En cuanto a la nacionalidad no tienen ninguna porque no son ni dominicanos ni haitianos. Son unos seres prácticamente ante la ley que no existen.
Another problem with not having papers is that they're trapped in the batey. If these people tried to move to Santo Domingo, or even travel throughout the country, they're stopped every hour on public transportation, hauled into prison for however, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then deposited back in Haiti, not at their house, just across the border, wherever the military may see fit to deposit them. So it's a huge problem because it keeps people trapped here.
A ver, dime tú, ¿a ti qué te gustaría ser cuando tú seas grande? ¿Qué te gustaría ser? ¿Y lo otro qué te gustaría ser?
Policía.
¿Te gustaría ser un policía? ¿Sí? ¿Y a ti qué te gustaría ser cuando seas grande?
Trabajo.
¿Qué trabajar? ¿Pero dónde? ¿En qué? ¿Qué te gustaría ser? ¿Te gustaría trabajar en una oficina? ¿Te gustaría manejar un carro? ¿A ti qué te gustaría ser?
Piloto.
¿Un piloto de avión? Sí. They're beautiful children with no hope for a better life. This is the residence of the administrator, Mr. Ricardo Hernandez, who is the ultimate responsible for the entire process from the bateyes to the sugar mill. He has about 25 to 30,000 people under his care, his responsibility. One of his main responsibilities is to make sure that the people that they bring across the border into the sugar mill, into the bateyes, into the sugarcane fields, never leave. So at any cost, he has to make sure that these people remain here and do not escape because they've invested money in bringing them over for this particular purpose, this agricultural activity.
Have you ever spoken to this man?
I've spoken to him many, many times.
What does he say when you...
He basically hates me. He hates anybody that interferes with his business and with his job. He would be very happy that I went around every batey, and he would be my best friend if all I did was celebrate Mass.
Instead, Father Christopher and the church's lawyers have been organizing the batey dwellers to stand up for their rights. By working together, the bateys have gained some concessions from the Vicini. Leading today's meeting is Johnny Belizaire. Representing Batey Canepa is Yela Machasa.
Bueno, en mi batey el trabajo mío, porque antes, yo veo la cosa se está cambiando. Antes, cuando lleguen los trabajadores, ellos lo maltratan, le da golpe, ahora no. Me siente bien por eso, por el trabajo del sedail y trabajo del padre.
Muchas cosas han cambiado. Gracias a ustedes y a muchos periodistas que han venido, que ya la empresa ha decidido quitarle las escopetas a los campestres, porque anteriormente nosotros vivíamos en los batillos y estábamos vigilados por los campestres que andaban con escopetas, y ya eso no pasa.
Beaucoup de non différents. La française était de
Por eso es que me lo encuentro complicado.
One of the things that have changed is now people enjoy a freedom of movement. And I actively encourage the workers who are unhappy to leave.
With the guns gone, Haitians can now leave the bâtés. But without papers, they still risk arrest and expulsion. Many who dare to flee pass through the town of Los Llanos, where Father Christopher lives. Los Llanos has become the center of the Vicini campaign to have the priest expelled from the country.
Quisiera que el padre se fuera. Fueran unos buenos deseos para mí. Para mí no, para el pueblo. Que se vaya y que se vaya.
¿Por qué? ¿Por qué?
Porque quiere invadir nuestro pueblo de indocumentados haitianos.
De nuevo, lo queremos fuera de aquí. Yo soy participante de eso. No estoy de acuerdo con nada de lo que hace.
Lo que le podemos atribuir a los Vicini es que ellos son los que han traído los haitianos y tienen toda una vida maltratando. Y imagínate cuando se acaba la zafra. Ya los haitianos no tienen sustento ninguno. O sea que ya ellos se olvidan de que los haitianos existen.
La verdad que la persona que dice que el padre es el encargado de haitianizar el país, a mí lo que me da un poco de risa, porque es algo como hasta burlesco. Porque yo no he visto en ningún momento que el padre ha traído ningún haitiano aquí.
I am Haitianizing this country, and I am antagonizing Dominicans and Haitians. The ones who are funding the campaign, the Vicinis, who are funding this campaign by accusing me of Haitianizing this country, are the only ones who cannot live without them.
The likelihood of Father Christopher being forced out increases dramatically when news breaks about his colleague, Father Pedro Ruqua. After 30 years of working with Haitian cane cutters, death threats and the lack of protection have forced Father Pedro to abandon his mission and leave the country. And now the company has made it clear to the Haitians that improved conditions will remain only as long as Father Christopher is there to protect them.
Bueno, yo sé que si se fue el padre, me va a quitar ese trabajo. Y cualquier que sabe que yo trabajo con el padre me va a abusar.
Yes, but Father leaves. This is a phrase that the company continually repeats to the workers. Things are the way they are because he is here, but just you wait until he is gone, and we will remind you who is in charge of this.
Si al padre Christopher lo sacan de este país, yo no voy a esperar a que los vecinos manden a alguien que me maten. Yo soy capaz de matarme a mí mismo porque yo sé que me van a matar. Y todo aquel que se acerca al padre Christopher en ese camino que él está recorriendo es un riesgo sumamente peligroso.
Day by day, protests mount.
En los actuales momentos tenemos un paro pacífico debido a la masiva haitianización que está cometiendo el cura Christopher Hartley en el municipio de San José de los Llanos. Nosotros queremos por este medio pedirle a las autoridades eclesiásticas y al presidente de la República que tome carta en el asunto lo más rápido posible, porque de no sacar de aquí antes del miércoles al cura Christopher Hartley podría darse una situación peligrosa en nuestro municipio.
¿Cuál es su apreciación sobre lo que está sucediendo
Lo que
aquí en Los
está
Llanos?
sucediendo aquí en Los Llanos es que han regado bastante dinero a varias personas para que amenacen a los colmados y a las guaguas que no han podido salir del pueblo por temor a que algo les suceda, no porque están apoyando huelga. No porque están apoyando huelga. Vaya a los colmados para que usted vea. Si los dueños de colmados apoyan a que el padre se vaya de aquí. Yo no me veo.
¿Sabe lo que me están pagando a mí? Mira.
Enséñame un solo haitiano que el padre.
Yo no tengo que enseñártelo para mí. Este cura, ni los vecinos, ni nadie tiene dinero para comprar a este que está aquí.
A mí no me da que no le importa de nadie, coño.
Ver cómo andaban con unas latas que hay de Brugal. Así era que andaban ellos. Y están todos borrachos. Ya ellos están peleando entre ellos mismos, que ya están borrachos.
¿Quiénes son ellos?
Los protestantes, los pagados, porque ellos son pagados. Aquí todo el mundo lo sabe, ustedes mismos lo saben, quiénes son. Ustedes saben que hay mucho dinero corriendo ahí.
Entonces ellos vienen, reúnen un grupito, les agarran y le dan 200 pesos, 300 a cada uno para que hagan la huelga.
Miren, los vecinos le ofrecen, van a poner 100.000 pesos para que lo repartan. Ellos reparten 20 y son 5. ¿En cuánto? 15 cada uno todo. Lo que están abusando de uno, eso es.
¡Ese maldito cura no se va! Nosotros tenemos que ir a qué. ¿A qué hombre de cojones, coño?
I think it's very important for me to be present, for them to know that there is leadership, that there is presence, that I have not gone. Is I can't just leave the battle to my parishioners.
He has this sort of outward personality of what his mission is, but there is, you know, very much a human person behind, with the pain of being very lonely in what he's doing, of feeling very misunderstood, feeling inadequate in what he's trying to do. As a man struggling there, you know, very lonely, very often.
Where people are working for almost nothing. The Vicinis have spent an absolute fortune thus far. God knows how much they're ready to spend in the days to come in getting me out of the country.
There is a massive demonstration planned for the streets of Los Llanos, and the possibility of a violent confrontation is high. At the center of the rally is the television host Consuelo Despradel. Haitians arrive from the bateys to support Father Christopher. They gather in the church with a crowd of Dominican supporters. But outside, protesters assemble.
Las autoridades sacan de nuestro país todo haitiano ilegal. Estas repatriaciones sean masivas, inmediatas e ininterrumpidas. Estamos exigiendo en este mismo orden la expulsión inmediata de todos los extranjeros subversivos, en especial la del cura Christopher Hartley.
Esa traición a nuestro país por cada dominicano que le sirva al cura Christopher Hartley.
Cuando menos se quiere, más se merecen el amor de Dios, porque más lo necesitan. ¿Quién es el que más necesita el amor de Dios, sino la oveja perdida?
¡Fuera, padre! ¡Fuera, padre! Levántate, levántate, levántate.
If I give in, what am I saying to the worker? It says, you're the priest, you have all the means at your disposal, and you couldn't stand the pressure, but you come to us and you tell us to not be afraid. I think I would be a fraud if I took even one step back. One of the beautiful things for me is to see the support and the backing of the community. If the community had backed my accusers, I would certainly be history today.
Pero bueno, ¿cómo está mi amigo? Llame. Pero eso parece un pedazo de madera. ¿Cómo está usted?
Estamos bien, mi padre. ¿Cómo está usted?
Muy bien.
Ahí regular.
¿Y usted no está picando acá?
The Batey is still a dangerous place.
Yo tengo muchos años que no.
Johnny has been fired. He and his family have been threatened with eviction from their home. But without legal status, they are unable to go elsewhere to make a living. And the attacks on Father Christopher continue.
I would like to be buried in the clandestine cemetery because I think that's where I belong. With those unnamed tombs, without even maybe a cross and a prayer. These are my people. I have come to live in solidarity with them, and whatever happens to them, I would like it to happen to me.
Nous vivons, mettre la vie, nous n'en